I stood in the small kitchen of our rented apartment in outer Houston, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, like a swarm of angry bees casting harsh shadows on the divorce papers Erica had just shoved across the scratched Formica table. Her words hit me like a sucker punch to the gut. I'm tired of living like a failure. You're the biggest burden in my life. She spat them out with a cold certainty, her eyes those same blue eyes I'd once lost myself in, now devoid of any warmth or regret. She picked up the pen, her manicured fingers gripping it tightly, and signed her name with decisive strokes, as if she were erasing not just our marriage, but every shared memory we'd built over 7 years. I watched her, feeling the weight of the moment settle in my chest like lead. She had no idea that just hours earlier, while she was probably sipping wine with her new lover, I'd finalized a deal worth $60 million for Hydrocell Innovations. The startup I'd sacrificed everything for my steady job at Lockheed Martin in Dallas. My weekends, my sleep had finally paid off. The email from the California-based energy fund had come through that morning confirming the investment, but with a strict 45-day non-disclosure clause. I couldn't tell a soul, not even her. In her eyes, I was still the fool tinkering with hydrogen fuel cells in our garage surrounded by wires and prototypes that she mocked as junk taking up space. She pushed the papers toward me, her lips curling into a smirk. "Sign it, Julian. Let's end this charade." Her voice dripped with impatience as if I were a minor inconvenience in her perfectly planned escape. I picked up the pen, my hand steady despite the storm raging inside me. I signed my name, Julian Mayfield, without a word of protest, without a single argument. Why fight when the battle was already won in ways she couldn't imagine? She didn't know about Blake Connors, her charming new flame, the CFO of Nova Drive, that electric car manufacturer she raved about. She didn't know that Nova Drive had been courting Hydrocell for months, desperate for our breakthrough in fuel cell tech to power their next line of vehicles. And she certainly didn't know that I'd already turned down their $220 million buyout offer, opting instead to sell exclusive rights to their biggest rival, Arctic Motors. As she gathered her things, a designer handbag I'd scrimped to buy her last Christmas keys to the car we'd shared, I felt a quiet resolve harden within me. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something precise, calculated, and utterly devastating. No shouting matches, no public scenes, just the slow unraveling of her illusions piece by piece. I handed her the signed papers, our fingers brushing for what might be the last time. She snatched them away, already turning toward the door, her heels clicking on the linoleum like a countdown to her freedom. But as she walked out, slamming the door behind her, I sat there in the silence, the fluorescent light still humming. In my mind, the plan was already forming a revenge not born of anger, but of patience and truth. She thought she'd won, leaving me behind in this cramped apartment with nothing but my failed dreams. Little did she know those dreams were about to eclipse everything she valued: money, status, power. The only question lingering in the air as I stared at the empty space where she once stood was this: if the person you loved turned their back on you, calling you a burden while plotting their escape, what would you do? Would you fight back with words, or let the truth speak louder than any shout? 7 years ago, I met Erica at a tech conference in Dallas. I was just a mid-level systems engineer at Lockheed Martin, buried in blueprints and code for military-grade hardware, pulling long hours but loving the challenge. She was this vibrant PR specialist for a high-end cosmetics firm, gliding through the crowd in a sharp blazer and heels that clicked with confidence. Our eyes met during a panel on innovation, and by the end of the night, we were laughing over bad conference coffee-swapping stories about our dreams. Mine was to revolutionize energy tech. Hers was to build a life of glamour and influence. We fell hard dates in cozy Tex-Mex spots, weekend drives through the hill country, whispered promises under starry skies. We got married a year later in a simple ceremony at her family's ranch outside Houston, vowing to support each other's ambitions no matter what. But ambitions have a way of fracturing vows. For the first few years, things were good. We rented a modest apartment in the suburbs, nothing Nothing fancy, just enough space for us and our shared optimism. I worked my Lockheed job by day tinkering with hydrogen fuel cell prototypes in our garage by night. Erica thrived in her PR role, networking at galas and events, her social circle expanding with every cocktail party. She loved the spotlight, the designer outfits, the Instagram-worthy vacations we scraped together on my salary. But when our savings started dipping, and my side project, Hydrocell Innovations, demanded more time, the cracks appeared. I quit Lockheed 4 years and convinced my startup with 2 college buddies could change the clean energy game. Erica supported it at first, or at least pretended to. "You're brilliant, Julian," she'd say, kissing my forehead after another late-night failure in the garage. But as months turned to years and investors ghosted us, her patience evaporated. The apartment felt smaller with each. Our kitchen table, once a place for shared meals and laughter, became a battlefield of unspoken resentments. Erica would come home from work, her makeup flawless from some upscale event, and I'd be there in grease-stained jeans poring over schematics. "Another all-nighter?" she'd ask, her tone laced with disappointment rather than concern. I'd nod, explaining the latest breakthrough in proton exchange membranes, but her eyes would glaze over. Soon the jabs started subtle at first, then sharper. "You're the only one in my friend group without a decent watch," she'd say casually over dinner, glancing at my worn Timex. Or, "I can't bring you to these events anymore. It's embarrassing explaining why my husband drives a 10-year-old Honda." I absorbed it all, telling myself it was stress from her job, from the pressure of her affluent upbringing, where success was measured in bank statements and social media likes. We'd argue, but I'd always back down first. "I'm doing this for us," I'd say, pulling her close. "Hydrocell will take off and we'll have everything you want." But deep down, I knew she was slipping away. She started skipping our date nights, claiming networking obligations. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages she hid from view. I suspected something or someone, but buried it under work. Then came the spring breakthrough. After 18 grueling months of trials, failures, and near bankruptcy, Hydrocell got the email $60 million in funding from a Silicon Valley energy fund. It was conditional on total secrecy for 45 days, no announcements, no celebrations. I wanted to shout it from the rooftops, to pull Erica into my arms and say, "See, it was all worth it." But I couldn't. Not yet. In her eyes, I remained the dreamer with nothing to show the husband who dragged her into a life of scrimping while her friends jetted off to Europe. The distance grew. She'd come home smelling of wine and unfamiliar cologne, brushing off my questions with a laugh. "Just a client dinner, Julian. Don't be paranoid." But paranoia wasn't needed. The signs were blatant. One night, I overheard her on the phone in the living room, her voice low and intimate. "He's still got nothing. Still thinks he'll hit it big. Poor guy." A pause, then laughter. "I've seen the lawyer. Just one more month and I'm free to be with you completely." My world tilted. I stood in the hallway shadows, heart pounding, piecing it together. Blake Connors, CFO of Nova Drive, that rising star in electric vehicles. She'd mentioned him casually before, a colleague from an event. But now it clicked. The late nights, the secretive texts, it all made sense. She was planning her exit betting on a man who embodied the success I supposedly lacked. The next morning, I poured her coffee as usual. Inside, something shifted, not rage, but resolve. Hydrocell wasn't just my dream anymore. It was my leverage. Unbeknownst to her, Nova Drive had approached us weeks earlier, eager to acquire our tech for their battery systems. Their offer, $220 million. I'd stalled them, sensing opportunity. Now, with her betrayal confirmed, I made my move in silence. I reached out to Arctic Motors, their direct competitor, offering exclusive licensing. The deal was in motion, sealed under NDAs. Erica thought she was leaving a loser behind. She had no clue she was walking away from the architect of her new lover's downfall. As the weeks dragged on, our interactions turned clinical. She packed boxes while I worked in the garage, pretending not to notice. Finally, at the end of the month, she confronted me. "I can't do this anymore. I've met someone, Blake. He can give me the life you never could." Her words stung, but I nodded. "I'll sign," I said simply. No pleas, no accusation. She looked surprised, almost disappointed by my lack of fight. Within a week, she was gone, posting photos from luxury getaways with him, captioning them with veiled digs at her old life. I let her go, focusing on Hydrocell's launch. The $60 million infused our operations, prototypes scaled up, patents filed. Forbes whispers started circulating, but I stayed low-key, no press releases yet. All the while, the Arctic deal simmered, a ticking bomb under NovaDrive's foundation. Erica thought she'd won. I knew better. Patience wasn't weakness, it was my sharpest weapon. One night, a few weeks before she dropped the divorce bombshell, I lay in bed pretending to sleep, the weight of another failed prototype run still heavy on my mind. Erica had come home late again, her footsteps light as she moved through the apartment. I heard her in the living room, her voice a hushed whisper that at first I thought it was a work call, maybe coordinating some PR event, but the tone was too intimate, too laced with mockery. "He's still got nothing," she said, her words slicing through the darkness. "Still thinks he'll hit it big with that garage junk. Poor guy." A soft laugh followed, the kind that twisted my gut. "I've seen the lawyer. Just one more month and I'm free to be with you completely." My heart slammed against my ribs, a raw ache spreading through my chest like ice water. I stayed still, eyes squeezed shut, piecing together the fragments. Blake Connors. It had to be him. She'd mentioned him offhand a few times, some hotshot CFO at NovaDrive, the electric vehicle company making waves in the industry. "Met him at a conference," she'd said casually. But now it all clicked, the late nights, the secretive smiles at her phone, the way she'd pull away when I tried to hold her. She was planning her escape, trading me in for a man who reeked of success. I didn't move, didn't confront her. Instead, I lay there until her breathing evened out beside me, my mind racing through the implications. Hydrocell's funding was locked in, but the secrecy clause bound me. She had no clue about the $60 million sitting in escrow, or that NovaDrive, Blake's company, had been sniffing around our tech for weeks. The next morning, I rose early as always, brewing coffee in our cramped kitchen. The aroma filled the air, a false sense of normalcy. Erica emerged from the bedroom, her hair tousled, grabbing her mug with a distracted, "Thanks." I watched her sip it, chatting about her day ahead, some client meeting in downtown Houston, while I nodded along, my face a mask of routine. Inside, the betrayal burned, but I channeled it into focus. That day at the garage, I dove deeper into the prototypes, refining the hydrogen cell efficiency metrics. My co-founders sensed. What I didn't tell them was that NovaDrive's acquisition offer had landed in my inbox, $220 million for full rights to our tech. It was tempting enough to bury our debts and launch us into the stratosphere, but now, with Erica's words echoing in my head, it felt like leverage. Over the following weeks, the distance between us grew into a chasm. She'd stay out later, her excuses flimsier, team building at work, or catching up with old friends. I'd find receipts in her purse, wine tastings, hotel bars, places far beyond our budget. I didn't snoop intentionally. They just fell out one day while I was grabbing keys. Each one was a confirmation, but I held back. Why tip my hand? Hydrocell's deal was progressing under the radar, patents filed, lab tests greenlit. I met with lawyers in secret, not for divorce, but to structure the company airtight. My shares locked in trusts, IP shielded from any marital claims. If only she knew. Then came the confrontation. It was a humid evening in late spring, the kind where the Texas air clings like regret. I got home from the garage, grease under my nails, to find her at the kitchen table, papers spread out. "We need to talk," she said, her voice flat. No preamble. She slid the divorce packet toward me, her signature already there in bold ink. "I can't do this anymore, Julian. I've met someone, Blake. He can give me the life you never could." Her words landed like blows, each one echoing her phone call. She elaborated almost casually, weekends in Napa, promises of a Napa Valley engagement, a future without struggling. NovaDrive's rising stock, Blake's executive perks, it all poured out. Her eyes gleaming with excitement, as if she were describing a promotion rather than dismantling our life. I sat there absorbing it, my face impassive. Not chasing pipe dreams in a garage. The irony twisted inside me. NovaDrive's success hinged on tech like ours, and they'd been begging for a meeting. But I said nothing about that. Instead, I picked up the pen. "I'll sign I told her, my voice even. No pleas, no accusations. She blinked, surprised by my compliance, perhaps expecting a fight to validate her choice. I scrawled my name, the ink flowing as smoothly as my resolve. She gathered the papers quickly, almost eagerly, mentioning she'd move out by week's end. As she packed, posting filtered photos of her new chapter on social media vineyards, diamond rings, captions like, "Finally getting what I deserve." I watched from the sidelines. But while she celebrated her escape, I made my moves. In hushed calls from the garage, I rejected Nova Drive's offer, outright citing strategic misalignment. Then I pivoted to Arctic Motors, their fiercest competitor. Our tech would supercharge their hybrid lineup, and they jumped at exclusive licensing terms that would cripple Nova Drive's supply chain. The deal was inked under layers of NDAs, my role as controlling shareholder buried in corporate veils. Erica thought she'd left a loser. She had no idea she'd ignited a fire that would consume her illusions. Each step I took reviewing contracts, fortifying assets, was a quiet placement of chess pieces. The board was set. All that remained was the checkmate. As she drove away in her packed car, waving dismissively, I stood in the doorway, the weight of secrets heavier than any burden she'd accused me of being. The real game was just beginning. A year passed in a blur of board meetings, patent filings, and quiet triumphs. Hydrocell had exploded our hydrogen tech powering prototypes for major automakers, Forbes dubbing me the silent disruptor of clean energy. I'd traded the old Honda for a sleek electric sedan, the Garage Lab for a gleaming headquarters in Austin, complete with a penthouse view of the Colorado River. But I kept a low profile, no flashy interviews, no social media boasts. The world knew Hydrocell, but few connected it back to the failed engineer Erica had discarded. Then one crisp autumn morning, the invitation arrived in my mailbox, a cream envelope with gold embossing from the Houston Country Club. Blake and Erica cordially invite Julian Mayfield to celebrate their wedding. Tucked inside was her handwritten note, "Hope you can make it to see what real success looks like." I stared at it, a faint smile tugging at my lips, not from bitterness, but from the irony. Real success. She'd soon learn what that truly meant. The timing was poetic. Just 2 weeks earlier, I'd finalized the exclusive licensing deal with Arctic Motors, locking Nova Drive out of the hydrogen game entirely. Their stock had already dipped on rumors, but the hammer would fall soon. I RSVP'd, yes, not for reconciliation, but for closure. On the wedding day, a warm Saturday in October, I arrived in style. My security team, 4 discreet professionals in black suits, flanked me as 3 black SUVs pulled up to the club's manicured entrance. I stepped out in a tailored Tom Ford suit, Patek Philippe glinting on my wrist, every detail a subtle rebuke to the man she'd mocked. The valet's eyes widened. "Mr. Mayfield of Hydrocell." Word spread like wildfire through the arriving guests, executives from energy firms, local politicians, media types who'd once ignored my pitches. I signed the guest book calmly, exchanging handshakes with a few who now clamored for my attention. "Incredible work on those fuel cells," one investor said, slipping me his card. I nodded politely, my focus elsewhere. The ceremony was set in the club's grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers sparkling above rows of white chairs draped in silk. Over 300 guests milled about, sipping champagne amid whispers of power couple and dream wedding. Blake stood at the altar in a crisp tux, chatting with his groomsmen, his face the picture of smug victory, until he spotted me. His smile faltered, color draining from his cheeks. He knew exactly who I was. Nova Drive had begged for our tech. I'd strung them along just long enough to seal the Arctic deal. Blake excused himself from his group, weaving through the crowd toward me, his stride forced. "Julian," he said, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "Didn't expect to see you here." I shook it firmly, my expression neutral. "Wouldn't miss it. Congratulations." He leaned in closer, voice low and urgent. "About that licensing. Any chance we could revisit Nova Drive? Could really—" I cut him. "Enjoy your day." He backed away, eyes darting nervously as if sensing the noose tightening. Then came Erica. She descended the grand staircase from the bridal suite, radiant in her Vera Wang gown veil trailing like a conqueror's banner. Her bridesmaids fluttered around her, but the room's energy shifted when she saw me. She froze mid-step, her bouquet clutched too tightly, the glow fading from her face. Whispers rippled. "That's Julian Mayfield, the Hydrocell guy, Erica's ex." She recovered quickly, plastering on a smile, but her eyes betrayed the shock, confusion, regret, calculation flickering in rapid succession. She approached the crowd parting like she was no longer the star. "Julian," she said, her voice a mix of surprise and forced warmth. "You came?" I nodded. "Beautiful venue. Thanks for the invite." Up close she looked flawless, but I saw the cracks the way her gaze darted to my watch, my suit, piecing together the puzzle she'd missed. We exchanged pleasantries, the air thick with unspoken history. "Blake and we're happy," she said almost defiantly. "I see that." Before she could probe further about Hydrocell, about my transformation, I leaned in slightly. "Thanks for the invite," I repeated. "I've already given you two a wedding gift 2 weeks ago, actually." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" I smiled faintly. "You'll see soon enough." I turned away, engaging a nearby guest in conversation about energy markets. Leaving her standing there, the bridal glow dimmed. The ceremony preceded vows exchanged under arched flowers, but the undercurrent was electric. Guests checked their phones during the reception, murmurs growing about Nova Drive's sudden stock dip. Blake paced near the bar, his phone glued to his ear, sweat beading on his forehead. Their shares plummeted 37% in a day, analysts citing loss of key tech exclusivity to Arctic Motors. Blake was ousted from the board by week's end, his power couple dreams crumbling amid boardroom scandals and investor lawsuits. The wedding, meant to cement their status, became tabloid fodder. Tech mogul's ex-crash's wedding and company. Erica's social feeds went silent, her Napa-filtered life exposed as fragile. My name trended, Hydrocell, hailed as the disruptor, but I stayed out of the spotlight, letting the facts speak. It wasn't vengeance. It was consequence. She'd chosen flashover foundation, and now the ground had given way beneath her. 2 months after the wedding, I was in my Austin office overlooking the river from floor-to-ceiling windows when my assistant buzzed. "A Miss Erica Mayfield is here. No appointment, but she insists." I paused mid-review of expansion reports for Hydrocell's new European branch. Curiosity won over dismissal. She entered, looking diminished, hair pulled back, simply no makeup. A plain blouse and jeans replacing the designer armor she'd once worn. Her eyes, red-rimmed, avoided mine at first, then locked on with a mix of desperation and remorse. "Julian," she started, voice cracking. I didn't know. About Hydrocell, about everything. I was wrong. So wrong." I gestured to the chair across my desk, staying seated. "What brings you here, Erica?" She sat, hands twisting in her lap. "Blake's gone. Nova Drive fired him, the scandals, the stock crash, it's all over the news. We lost the house deposit, everything. But that's not why I'm here. I see now what I threw away. You were building something real, and I betrayed you for illusions." Tears welled up. Is there any chance I miss what we had?" I leaned back, studying her, not with anger, but clarity. The woman before me was a shadow of the one who'd called me a burden. "I loved you once, enough to sign away my pride, but now I love my peace more." Her face crumpled, sobs breaking free. I slid an envelope across the desk. "This is $100,000 from the scholarship fund I started in my mother's name. Use it to start over. Maybe go back to school, learn something meaningful. Not for me, but for you." She took it with trembling hands, whispering thanks through tears. As she left, I felt no triumph, just finality. In the following months, I heard through mutual contacts she'd enrolled in a psychology program at a community college in Austin, renting a small apartment, working part-time at a bookstore. No more Napa filters or power couple posts, just quiet rebuilding. As for me, Hydrocell surged partnerships with global automakers, a Time cover story headlining "The Quiet Revolution in Clean Energy." I founded the Second Bloom Foundation, funding startups, recovering from setbacks, turning my pain into purpose. I'd let truth roar where words failed, dismantling her world without a single shout. If you were in my shoes, facing betrayal from the one you trusted most, would you forgive or choose peace? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more interesting and true-to-life stories.